All right, 8 hours and counting, and now everyone is scrambling ahead of a shutdown that is looking likely at midnight. Here is the lowdown on where we stand right now. Reports that Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell is gauging interest among his troops for a measure to keep the government funded another week. That would avoid a shutdown and supposedly give both sides time to iron out a longer-term deal. Now, this after the Senate rejected House amendments to a short-term spending bill that would delay the president's health care law. But House Republicans just wrapping up a strategy session of their own, and they're not exactly taking no for an answer. Now considering a counteroffer to delay key elements of that health care law, including the individual mandate and scrap health care subsidies for the president and Congress. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has already made it very clear if it ain't clean, it ain't happening, which means a simple budget measure, or the answer is simply no. Ditto for President Obama, who insists he's open to negotiate as long as Republicans stop insisting on cutting funds for his health care law. But Republicans, particularly conservative Republicans, are not doing that. Democrats equally adamant that they damn well better do that, which means this: lights out at midnight, unless a miracle happens, and soon. Well, we just got word, everybody, and welcome to you. I'm Neil Cavuto, that at least they agree on this much, that they'll protect the military in the event of a shutdown. More on that in a minute. To the president meeting with his cabinet at this very hour. Indications are not much has really changed, and the government will soon be down to spare change. Less than 8 hours away from something that hasn't happened in 17 years. The United States government shutting down. And we are all over it with senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram on the last-minute maneuvering. Ed Henry at the White House on what the president is strategizing. Fox Business Network's Sandra Smith on a stock market increasingly fretting. And former Republican Senate boss Trent Lott on what, Mitch McConnell has got to be sweating. We begin with Chad at the Capitol. Chad, what's the latest?
Well, the latest here in just the past couple of minutes is House Speaker John Boehner has come out and he has rejected any idea of a clean CR, meaning just passing a bill to keep the government open without any strings attached. Also in the past half hour, the minority leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi, said that this strategy of continuing to attach these health care provisions to any sort of a spending bill, she said it's like hound dogs baying at the moon. And she also said that she and the Speaker spoke earlier today, and she offered Democratic support. She said, look, if you can bring in some Republicans and we'll bring in a lot of Democrats, we can pass this. Democrats also in the House of Representatives think that they've already given on this. The spending bill under the Budget Control Act, this is the big bill that lifted the debt ceiling a couple years ago. Now think about how big this number is, Neil, $1.058 trillion. This current spending bill is down to $986 billion. So Democrats are saying, look, we'll take that number. We've already caved. Just keep just to stop putting all these health care provisions on a bill to keep the government open.
All right, I'm just curious. I'm sorry, I zoned out there as I was checking some of those on the wires here. This idea that we got to protect the military at all costs here so that they're not adversely impacted. That's something on which the two sides agree, but that seems to be the extent of their sort of a bipartisan look at this.
Yeah, they're at it. Yeah, that's just about it. And what you're going to see later, if you watch the Olympics and you watch ping pong in the Olympics where they bounce the ball back and forth, this is actually the parliamentary term here on Capitol Hill of what's going on right now. The Senate has ponged a bill back to the House of Representatives. Later tonight, the House is going to bring back this new bill and so at some point vote on it and ping it back to the Senate, probably just before midnight, and then the ball will be in the Senate's court. And we'll see if there's time to pong it back yet again. The other key thing I want to direct you to, if there is still congressional action or, say, talks or negotiations going on, the government may not necessarily shut at midnight. Why? In March of 2011, we came within a couple of hours of a government shutdown. And they in fact, the Senate and House voted after midnight. And President Obama did not sign the new bill to keep the government open for 3 weeks until the next day. So there was 14 hours of sort of legislative grout or putty to keep the government open during that period of time. So long as they don't send a message to the Office of Personnel Management. There was a guy in John Boehner's office, a top aide, who told me, he said, so long as he didn't send this pre-written email to OPM, that the government would not shut down. And that's what happened 2 years ago.
Well, as you remind me, Chad, they make the rules, so they can change the rules, I guess. Chad Pergram in the Capitol. All right, well, stock seeing red, nevertheless, on all of this drama today. So as this shutdown threat nears, the selling ensues. Still a solid performance for the markets for the month and the quarter, which just ended today. So what happens tomorrow if there is indeed a shutdown? Well, history might surprise you. Fox Business Network's Sandra Smith at the CME, keeping track of it all. What are you hearing, Sandra?
That's right. Well, Neil, if you look back over the past 100 years, September has typically been a down month for the stock market. Not this September. In fact, right now we're looking at gains of more than 2% for the Dow Jones Industrial Average for this September. The S&P 500, a gauge of the broader market, up nearly 3% for the month. And the technology-heavy NASDAQ, the clear winner here, posting about a 5% gain for the month. And on the quarter, stocks faring very well there as well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, actually the worst of the major averages, but still posting a 1.5% gain for the quarter. The S&P 500 up about 5%. And again, the tech-heavy NASDAQ, the winner here, the NASDAQ gaining nearly 11% for the third quarter. So that would be the big winner. For the sectors for the month, we had strong performance from industrial stocks. Thank Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve for that. The weak U.S. dollar certainly helping a lot of those big international names perform very well overseas, earning here in the United States. Consumer discretionary and material stocks followed. For the quarter, anything related to commodities did very well in the stock market because you had big gains in oil as well as gold and silver. Gold gaining 9% for the quarter. Silver prices up 12%. Investors really flocking to those precious metals as a safe haven during times of uncertainty as we face this government shutdown. And also, by the way, if you were to look back at history, that last government shutdown, to give us some clue as to what we could expect from the stock market if things were to shut down tonight, you might not see that much movement because looking at that 95, 96 shutdown, 21-day shutdown that it was, stocks barely budged. In fact, they went up just a bit. And after the 21-day shutdown, in the month that followed, the stock market actually rallied between 3 and 4%. So that's something to note as we head into all this. And Neil, as I hand it back to you, there's a lot of uncertainty heading into this. As a gauge of uncertainty or fear in the marketplace, we tend to look at the VIX, which measures options activity for movement in the market. It spiked today. So there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear as we head into tonight. Back to you.
Sandra, thank you very much. If we could revisit that chart again, guys, I just want to explain. We had two essential shutdowns in a short period of time here. You usually get a great deal of selling prior to the feared shutdown and what it could mean. And then as things look like, hey, it's not the end of the world, market stabilizes. And as Sandra pointed out afterwards, markets went up in that case in a little more than a month after the shutdown, more than 10%. So the fears tend to generate a sell-off ahead of the event, and after the event, cooler heads and just calmer heads prevail. Trent Lott has seen all this play out before. Of course, the senator was the majority whip during the last government shutdown. What does he see this time around? What do you think, Senator?
Well, I think Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, may save the day once again, as he has done twice before in the last 3 years. He's moving toward a short-term extension, is what it sounds like, for a week or two, so that this effort can continue to go forward, hopefully with some positive results.
Now, we should explain a short-term extension that would be a clean extension, just keep the government lights on another week or so, then they could work out a longer plan. Would that be readily acceptable, do you think, to the other side?
I think it would be readily acceptable to the Democrats in the Senate and the Democrats in the House, and I think maybe even the Republicans in the House. It's not, you're not ending the debate or the discussion. And by the way, I do think it's important that we've been having a lot more attention given to the problems with Obamacare and what we're about to have to deal with in that area. So it has not been, for naught for the Republicans. But I think to have a shutdown is totally unnecessary. It's not wise. We had that experience in 1995. I was the Republican whip, and I remember talking to Newt Gingrich, the speaker, saying, I'm not sure this is a good idea. But here's the positive that came out of it, Neil. Over the next 3 years, working with Clinton in the White House and Republican Congress, we got welfare reform, balanced budget, we cut taxes, we passed safe drinking water, we raised the spending for the military and raised our military men and women's salaries. I think that after that 95 shutdown, Clinton realized, look, I'm going to have to deal with these guys. We're going to have to make some concessions, and we're going to have to do some positive things for our economy. And
yeah, but he had re-election to think about, right? This president does not. And back then, I believe Republicans lost 9 seats in the House and the presidency with Bob Dole. Now there might be a variety of other reasons.
One other thing. Go ahead. We picked up a net gain of 2 seats in the Senate in 1996.
Fair enough. So you don't think that, regardless of what mainstream media types will say, that this is all Republicans to lose?
No, I don't. You know, look, the missing player in all of this is the president, President Obama. You know, he played golf on Saturday. He won't negotiate on anything. The difference between his position and Clinton's was Clinton was engaged, maybe sometimes too much, but he was in the negotiations. He'd get under the hood of the car and get his hands greasy and dirty. We're missing a lot of leadership in Washington right now, and leadership begins in Washington at the White House, and he's not at the table.
Real quickly, if a measure came back to the Senate right now that only had ultimately this exemption issue for members of Congress and the president, that they don't have to participate in the health care law, knocking that down, it would really put Harry Reid on the spot, right? That he was rejecting something that made it look like he was favoring Congress and protecting and coddling Congress. Would that be the measure that's going to get us past this?
There are a lot of things here that has broad support, like the repeal of the tax on medical devices,
right,
you know, heart devices and things. And also there's broad support for the embarrassing fact that the Congress itself and the administration is not going to be under the same rules as American people, individuals and small businesses. So if it came over with just that, it would be very hard for the Senate to reject that. But if it's attached to repeal or delay of Obamacare, that wouldn't fly.
All right.
Hey, my argument would be get a couple of things that really are needed and are good and can be done. Do that and live to fight another day. This battle will be going on again in October and November and December.
Senator, thank you.